Okay, first impressions, this thing is a bit frosted. Turning is actually really fast. And I can't really tell if that one issue I had with the prototype was actually fixed. So for those of you who don't know, I actually tried a prototype a very long time ago, and it was actually almost a year ago. The video was only released on the January 2023. It's actually filmed earlier. It's just that I wanted to respect Moi's secret before they officially announced the product. That's why I didn't release it until I saw someone else made a video on it, then I released it. But anyway, what I had in that video is that I said that the second layer was a bit weak, the first was a bit weak, and the third was quite strong. But from here, what I can tell is the second layer is actually somewhat strong, and it's still weaker than the third, but I can obviously tell that the first layer is the weakest of the three, which I really think is quite an upgrade. The cube is also really fast. So yeah, I do think the issue the prototype is fixed well, although I might have preferred all four of the entire inner all feeling the same and the outer is a bit weaker, but I think this is good as well. Yeah, the outers really feel really fast and nice and really weak. The corner cutting isn't the greatest because the cube does feel like it came with quite a tight default tension. So normally I'm someone who uses tight cubes, but I do not know if I'm going to keep to this tension or actually loosen it a bit. But for now, it's just a really smooth and really nice cube. And maybe corner cutting could have improved a bit more if I set the cube up properly. But other than that, I do think the magnets feel good, and the speed and the smoothness does feel good. And maybe at best I will just do a bit of polishing, or maybe UV, depends. Because the thing about UV is it might not be as consistent. That might risk the WCA legality of the cube if one sticker is obviously different from the rest. Okay, in this case it's not sticker, but you know what I mean, one square is different. I would say it's quite a good first impression out of the box. So if you're a beginner looking to get a decent 6x6, I think the Meilong 6V2 is actually not bad. If you're an advanced cuber with specific preferences, then obviously I might still want to recommend the outshoe over this, but this one has a few things that the outshoe doesn't have. So obviously those few things are the outer layer size. Like this cube has a bigger outer layer than the outshoe WRM, and it's also smaller than the outshoe WRM. So if you prefer this layer ratio, definitely go for it. I definitely do enjoy bigger outer layers. I don't think this is horribly small that makes it difficult to grab. It's still a bigger outer layer compared to the inners, and it still turns pretty nice. I mean, it still grips pretty nice, but this one has a layer ratio more similar to that of a 5x5. I think I mentioned it before. The size is the same as the Ultron WRM, and the outer layer is also the same. It's a little bit smoother because the outshoe does have of course this has been used for a while and it's been set up, so it's quite smooth when I turn it. I do think this one, it has that typical Meilong smoothness to it. So yeah, definitely has potential. Okay, finally, one last thing which I forgot to do earlier. It's just a size comparison between the Meilong 4, 5 and 6. So this is 59, this is 60, this is 61. And they are really similar in size. Actually, comparing the three side by side, I actually would say that the Meilong 4 used to be my ideal 4x4 size, but going into the modern age now, it feels a little bit bigger than what I would like, and I might actually want or wish for a 58mm 4x4 sometime in the future. Whereas these two, I do think I really like the size of the Meilong 5 and 6 right now. Of course, the Meilong 4 isn't bad. I still really like its turning. And comparing the turning of all three, it's really similar, I would say, except for loop setup. So obviously this one is angstrom, this one has, I mean, not so pure of a supernova setup anymore, because obviously I did mention before that it lost a little bit of loop because I corner magnetized it and obviously had to touch the internals, but I've also put a little bit of a slow loop into the second layer so that the outer remains fast and the second is slowed down a little bit. So this is not so pure supernova anymore, and this one obviously is just stock out of the box. So yeah, the turn feeling is not exactly comparable between the three, but of course it's similar model. I can tell that they come from a similar series, just that the loop setup is different. Okay, I'm back. I've modded and set up this cube. Also done a UV coat despite what I said about risking the WCA legality if I UV coat something. I did have to use sandpaper to sand down a few pieces and then recoat them. Even now there's still a few pieces with some dots on it if you look up close, but from a distance the whole puzzle is just fairly uniform, and I think like this kind of violation is probably lower level than having a dent mark from dropping your cube. And like what I mean is dent mark but the piece is still flat. It really depends though, because some delegates are stricter than others. I've also core corner magnetized this cube with a few extra things like UV coating over the core corner magnet shells. I wanted to reduce the chance of something dislodging. I've also cut the torpedoes slightly shorter than the original cube. The original cube actually has very long torpedoes, and like I did this just to allow the core corner magnets to descend closer to the core. I've done this before on some other cubes where I did deep core corner magnets. Of course, I didn't eliminate the torpedoes completely because it's one of the greatest inventions against pops, and I don't want this cube to explode. Not that is likely, because this is really tightly tensioned, and for that matter, most of my cubes are very tightly tensioned. When it comes to the actual performance of this cube, it's super fast. It takes almost no effort to turn, and it's even faster than my Ultra WRM, which is the previous faster 6x6 that I currently own. The corner cutting isn't a lot, but I would say that's just for the max angle that it can corner cut. When it comes to actually being able to cut through the small angles, it's extremely effortless, and it's enough to make the cube flow between turns very easily. And the overall the max angle isn't as important. The core magnets also make it possible to feel a slight attraction from as far as around here, although that is not enough to auto align the cube, but I do feel that it helps to guide the alignment. Yeah, it also improves the stability and the control of the cube. So compared with the prototype that I got a while ago, I've actually never received the prototype in the original state. It has already been swapped for stronger springs when I got it, and it's just a lot more stable than this. But at the same time, it's like this one is just much faster. Overall, it's just better. I've also done a 9-hole Florian mod to the prototype, which I didn't do here. And while I do think having 9 holes is better than 4 holes, the improvement in the reverse corner cutting I get from it is fairly minimal, but the amount of effort needed to actually perform that mod is just much more. So I do think like the effort to reward ratio of performing a 9-hole Florian mod is just not worth it. Compared with some other cubes, I would say that I do wish this is about as stable as the Meilong 5 as well. The Meilong 5 has a really solid and stable feel, and it still has most of the speed of the Meilong 6. And it's like it's a bit like comparing the Shadow V2 to the Fog 5. In both cases, the 5x5 is a bit slower, but more stable than the 6x6, whereas both the Meilong 6 and the Shadow will squish if you turn too aggressive. Overall, during practice, I can get my normal averages on the Meilong 6, which is something I couldn't do on the prototype version. And like this particular UV ball core Meilong 6 can actually go toe to toe against my Ultra WRM, which is also core corner magnetized. But for competition purposes, I would say the Ultra is just more reliable. And I would say this for both the Meilong 5 and 6 actually. They are among the nicest cubes to practice with due to how low effort the turning is, and it makes it easier to train for much longer without tiring out. Plus the size of the cube is really good. But in competition, I would still be more likely to use more expensive and higher quality like Moe and G flagships, because they are just more reliable and more consistent.